go. I'm here today with the third instalment of our Put the Captains on the Rack series. This is John Allum, who is the captain of the seconds this year.
Hello everyone.
And I'm the captain of the long, dim, distant past. The ghost of Christmas past, I sometimes feel.
That was very fast.
I thought it was interesting just talking to you just a moment or so off record. And you were saying how you watched the other two and basically you like some things, disagree with other things.
Yeah.
Right, come on, give it straight to Dave.
No, I think
I'm joking.
Both of them sort of mentioned about it in a league side and the emphasis on winning and everything else. Whereas I guess I look at things slightly differently. Maybe when you're higher up the club you do, but in terms of building a culture, building a team, having good people around you, and having a good dressing room. And that in any sport is vitally important because you're going to have good days and bad days, and on bad days you need your characters to step up. So that's sort of how I look at things, because you can't win every single game, and you want sort of people to step up and show character when there's adversity on the pitch.
I showed it. It's interesting. I took a picture of the ground yesterday and showed it to Jacob, who's not played up there for many years.
Right.
But he said it's flat.
Yes.
And I said, yeah, I think that takes away one of our major advantages, which was when we had jockey bowling coming up the hill, when people didn't see him until he was almost at the crease.
Absolutely, yeah.
It was. I'm joking, but it's it's a bit like it was kind of an advantage in a way.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that the surface is so much better. When certainly if you sort of go back 20, 30 years, we didn't have water, and if there was a sustained dry period, it became quite sort of choppy up there. Whereas now, actually, on a dry day, if it's been dry for a while, and the pitch has been watered, it's a great true batting surface. And I found that to my cost one day when I was captain. I've got to say. So, it was several years ago now, and we were playing a side in the league, Waldron, and we scored over 300, just over 300 in 42 overs. I declared, so they had 49 overs.
That's going.
And one of their players who batted extremely well. We were debating when to declare and this, that and the other, and the bowlers are all excited. They got a big sort of total to bowl against, and this guy batted 149 not out and got it within 49 overs. So,
oh God.
And it's on Ian Jones's Facebook shot. He never lets me forget that one. But what can you do?
These things happen though. I think I wrote about it. The first and what should have been only game I ever captained. We had Clinton Douch, who got a century, and everyone else chipped in a bit. We scored over 200, which in the fours, this was the first time it ever happened in the fours. So I was thinking to myself, I'm going to captain a glorious victory here. We lost by 10 wickets. I could not believe it. We just could not take wickets. And if there's nothing else that cricket tells you is, for God's sake, be humble.
Yeah, absolutely.
So if you don't go into it with that attitude, you'll be given it very quickly.
Absolutely. Well, I think it's something like that, John's quite interesting because, and it's something that I've had to learn over time, is that I'm quite an attacking, and certainly when you've got runs on the board, there's this expectation you continue to attack, and actually there's a real skill at some point of pulling back and say, hang on a minute, I need to be slightly more conservative here, set the field back, and play a slightly different way. And that's something I struggle with because I naturally like to attack when I'm captain, and everyone likes to have some slips in and some attacking fielders, but you have to at the right point pull back and sort of be a bit more sort of pragmatic.
That game apart, I think there's something which I did actually learn out of it, is that there is actually a rhythm to every game.
Yeah.
And it's, as you say, you think, let's go to them like mad dogs, and of course that doesn't work. Your bowlers tire after a while, and the difference between what's a really aggressive delivery, coming up, pitching up and tickling your lower ribs, and what is a long hop, is only a few overs either way. You've got to be able to read. When I don't know, when one of the bowler goes for 12 off and over, is that the end of his spell, or do you think he's been unlucky and he's got another one in him? Yeah. It's reading that rhythm, I think.
Yeah,
it's important.
And the decision making there, I think. Making decisions. I know, Brooksy and Dave both talked about man management, whereas, part of the big part of captaincy for me is making decisions. And one of those decisions, and it's a 50-50 call, is the toss at the start of the game. you know, I remember we played at Firle last year, and it was a baking hot day. I had a good look at the wicket. You know, it looked good. You know, we needed to win the toss and bat. You know, toss went up. I win the toss. You know, that was the only crucial decision to make during the game. You know, sort of.
I always thought it was different in the fours because our batting was always frail, and I thought to myself, we can either put them in, let them bat first, use our bowlers first, and then try and bat against that total. Or alternatively, we could put our own batting in first, in which case the game would be over before tea time, much of the time. There were times, I have to say, when I may have grumbled a tad to the selectors and said things, because there were sometimes games where we'd have next to no batting and I'd be given 4 leg spinners. I don't know what I can do with this. That's going to, and I mean, those discussions are historical, but it's an important one, I think, as well. But as you say, there is. So usually what we would do is let them bat, and we just try and get them out at the end of it. But this leads me on to I suppose one of the things that's changed, which I personally, I'm very interested to get your take on. It used to be, what was it, 53 overs and 40 something?
Yep.
Of which you could pass some overs as well, depending on whether you bowled out and all the rest of it. And the range of possible results was win, loss, draw.
Yeah.
Now we seem to have stripped that down to 40 overs each way, and it's a definite win-lose.
Absolutely. I John, personally, I preferred having the draw option. I preferred having the longer game.
Well, I think back to one of the best players I know of to play with. It was a really good guy, Julian Aaron.
Yeah.
Absolutely, a lot of really the driest sense of humour on earth.
Yeah.
Great fun guy. And to my mind, a typical Julian innings would have lasted most of the overs usually, and consists of him taking an enormous long stride forward and just crushing the ball into the pitch, more or less.
Yeah.
And I think we've lost players like him because of this. I think because of the change in the rules. I don't think he's had quite the same. I'd love to see him playing again. I think he's a good. And he said we talked about dressing rooms. He's a great guy to have in the dressing room. Really is.
Yeah, there's a skill to drawing a game, and it's actually one of the things I was going to talk to you about was. I remember a particular game where actually, as well as it being a very long game, I ended up losing my trousers. So, we were.
It's a family show, remember?
Yeah. So we were playing over at St Peter's, and there's 2 pitches at St Peter's. We were on the far pitch, so we went and got dressed and changed in the dressing rooms, and then walked over to the far pitch. And it was again one of these days where you could sort of have 90 whatever overs, and I think we had about 42 or 43 overs, and I think from memory they batted for about 57 overs. So we were there for an awfully long time, and it was not long after the pavilion was finished, and so what we decided to do is rush back, get our pick up our possessions and head back to the pavilion back here to have a shower.
Yeah.
So been a long day, a lot to think about. So I've gone and got all of my stuff, or thought I have, and we jumped in the car. I was in someone else's car, still in my cricket whites or whatever. And we got back here, had a shower, and I got back and I realised I'd forgotten my trousers. So this was a slight oversight. Now, fortunately, Jockey was down there in Brighton that weekend. He was going to pick up my trousers, but not until the next day. So Jeremy Knott was playing with me. He had very fortunately, or I don't know which way to look at this, but he had a spare pair of his salmon cords. And so for the next 24 hours, I had a very tight pair of Jeremy Knott's salmon cords on.
In Brighton?
No, up here, waiting for Jockey to come back with my trousers. So,
It's, quite.
So, this year during captaincy, I don't want to lose my trousers. There's a lesson to be said.
I think there is. But it's interesting. I always enjoy going to other clubs' grounds because I don't know why. I suppose you know your own ground, don't you?
Yes.
You just it's always interesting, and sometimes you get these absolutely beautiful billiard table wickets. I mean, you just, your eyes just light up and you just think this is going to be as true as anything. I'll tell you just locally, one of the best pitches we used to play on was the lower pitch at Borderers.
Yes, very good pitch,
And I said you barely had to hit the ball. If you hit it, taps it all, it was head off to the boundary. Scores were generally high. Everyone enjoyed themselves. Yeah. And there was something in it for the bowlers as well, because they got a bit of jip as we got it going, moving on. But and I always used to think that. Well, I have to say I never enjoyed Cowsley Wood, and I still don't. I'm afraid. It's, I mean, I know it's the pitch we use, but it's the pitch we use. But as I said, I always used to like Bayham. I always thought Bayham. The actual strip itself was generally pretty true at Bayham. I mean, and you had all sorts of rabbit holes and whatever, you could break a leg in the outfield.
Sure.
But the best thing was the facilities, the actual changing rooms, which were pre First World War, as far as I could tell.
Yeah, absolutely.
And just to see the opposition team's hearts sink when they saw these facilities, and I'm sure that gave us another 20 runs, an extra wicket for just misery there. And the other great thing about Bayham was it was east-west. Mm-hmm. Absolutely east-west.
Yes.
We played one game where I remember we didn't finish until getting on for 8 in the evening, and we were pushing for a draw, and we had I think Paul Squires was keeping wicket. Yeah. And we decided the best strategy that they had it ended, I think, in a fairly grudging draw, but on one occasion they called us cheats.
Right.
Because I had basically Lawrence Smith bowling from the far end, from the western end, with the sunset right behind you. And I said, give it some air.
Yeah, and no, I do remember.
And by God, he did.
Yeah.
But there's all manner of mutterings. Yeah. I said to the keeper, and I think it was Paul, I said, are you okay with this? Because we risked obviously a hell of a lot of bats. And of course he was a darn good keeper. So.
Sure.
So it worked, but it was a lot of fun. But as I said, they reckon we were cheating.
Right. Right. Well, I think sort of cheating and everything else. It's a very difficult subject. I know you mentioned to both Dave and Brooksy about sort of sledging and.
Well, that's the thing. Yeah, I've been very interested to get your take on that.
Yeah, look, I've never thought it was a particularly good thing. I've never really tried to do it myself, and it's not really something that I particularly find that interesting. A couple of times I've seen it done, and it go horribly wrong. Where someone. We were playing this game one time and this guy came in, I can't remember who was sort of someone, he missed at least 5 or 6 of the first 10 balls, by quite some distance, and someone said something to him like, do you want to use the other end of the bat or whatever else it was. Yeah. About an hour and a half later this guy's got 100. He started to, it sort of focused his mind, he got in there and started, playing its all parts.
This is the thing, though, isn't it? You said it doesn't always work the way you think it's going to do. You said if they've got a basic talent, then as I say, it just galvanises that talent against you.
Yeah.
I've always taken the view with sledging that if it's funny, if it makes everyone laugh, it's actually it's just worth doing because it's a fun afternoon thing anyway. But I think back to some of the sledging, with the England team or whatever that they've had in the past. I remember Graham Thorpe, when his marriage was falling apart, and they were asking him questions and saying, how's the family, Thorpe? And you just think that's just nasty and unpleasant. They're thoroughly needless. And the other thing is, I think, with sledging is that a lot of it's an admission, it's almost a tacit admission that you're not good enough to get them out by your own abilities.
Exactly. Yeah.
And that therefore you shouldn't do it.
Yeah.
But when you have ones, the occasional sledge, which is obviously intended, just makes people laugh. When you have the batsman pulling away and he's killing himself laughing at the same time, then I think it works. It's a bit of fun, but aggressive stuff is just not necessary. You kind of think, well, it's at the end of the day, it's still a Saturday. You've got to be able to shake their hands at the end.
Absolutely, I totally agree. Yeah.
I think Andy said exactly that. So. What would you? I mean, obviously, over many years now, I'm just trying to think how many. I actually did write this down, and then of course lost a piece of paper, like everything. But
it's sort of over 30. I haven't played every single year, but I've certainly, I used to live in the village. I used to live just behind where the nets are now. Grew up in the village for a few years.
I keep thinking I'm going to move. Actually, I think all my needs are catered for. There's a shop.
And that's exactly how I live. And a train station if you need to go somewhere.
Well, exactly, yeah. And I think I shall probably buy a house here.
Yeah, it's a great spot, and there's some really nice people in the village. So it's great. Actually, Niall and Zoe live in our old house, our old family house.
Oh, right.
Yeah, so in the close. So, and I was very, very happy, and I was actually devastated when my mum and dad said, "Listen, I was about 16, 17, we're moving on," and I was pretty upset about that.
As close as that, I have to say.
Yeah.
But it's, I mean, Belsley Green is a great club, and it's a great village, I think, as
Yes.
well. And the last few days I'm more or less camping here, interviewing people, and doing the pub quiz as well. And there's a good feel about the place.
There is,
and more so now than there has been for a while, I think.
Yeah.
Because it's I think Nolan his
Sorry.
family
Yeah.
and just they just got it right. They understand what the pub needs, what the village wants.
Yeah.
Yeah, actually, I'm not going to go too far into this, but I don't I don't want to be slagging the original owners.
No.
But they've really got it right.
Well, I think if you've lived somewhere, you sort of get a feel for a place, and you sort of understand the people around you, and it's very much it is the hub of the community, and it's a great place to come on a Saturday or Sunday evening, whenever, or during the week if you're in a practice after a game, and you can unwind and with your friends and have a few drinks and enjoy yourself. So it's a great,
I've
very
kind
relaxing
of
vibe.
adopted this as my local. I think in the last few weeks, it's I just quite like the idea of, for me, irrespective of the cricket, just coming here over lunchtime, just breaks up the week.
Yeah.
I'm retired. My time's of my own, so
Yeah.
just come down here and just have a pint and a baked potato in that case.
Right, yeah. There's some interesting people that come in here, so you're very, very friendly and things going on. So I've always enjoyed coming to Brett Knocker, ever sort of whatever. But
so tell me about your first game you ever played.
Well, actually, I was going to tell you about that, Johnny. Absolutely, and I do remember it very well. It was over at Tunbridge Park,
right,
on the big sports ground there, and I was on a Saturday. And now, when I first started to play for the club, we had two sides. We had one Saturday and one Sunday, and the side on a Saturday was predominantly older guys. And what I mean,
on a Saturday or Sunday?
Yeah, on a Saturday. So we had a younger team on a Sunday, who were very young and competitive, and
it's almost the opposite.
yeah, exactly. It was, and we had a very competitive side. And on a Saturday, it was older guys that enjoyed the game, some of which were still very good players, but was sort of 50 plus. And I was sort of, at one stage, I was the youngest player by about 30 years, possibly 35. So. And the two things I remember about the game is I remember the first time going out to bat, and I probably didn't quite have the the strength to hit sort of bigger shots when you're sort of an early teenager and whatever else. So I've sort of pushed it around into the gaps a little bit. But the other thing I do remember about the game, we were in the field, and this was my first game, and I'm not going to mention the bowler's name, but he is a club legend, and he was opening the bowling. And the captain at the time, he was bowling okay, but the guy was sort of getting on top of him. And the captain took the second slip out. Without mentioning it to him, he took the second slip out. Next ball, guy edges it to second slip. And, he had a bit of a hissy fit about this. He then walked off the pitch. And this is my first game, and I'm sort of thinking, what is going on here?
I think if we're talking about, we're obviously not going to mention names, but I think if we're talking about the same bowler, I think he did it once when I was captain as well in the fours. So we probably are, but he was. But it's a club of legends though as well. I mean, there are some great people,
great characters,
who've been around a long time. Right?
Yeah.
And I think that kind of sets the flavour of the club as well. I mean,
Definitely.
I think this is what makes it. And I'd say, and the other thing which I've always been fascinated by, I never really got my head around, and I talked to Dave Pearson about this, was the Frant versus Belsley Green thing. I wouldn't say, it's not exactly a vendetta or anything, but there's a little bit of needle there, I always think.
Well, it's interesting. I had a chat with Dave, actually, myself, and we've talked about maybe having a different type of game, when we play Frant, because we're all friends, and sometimes things get a bit sort of carried away, and and you get that with sort of in inter-club games as well, where people sort of get a bit over the top and sort of.
I've seen some bizarre things. I remember one year watching the Frant Belsley Green game, and there was Jeremy Knott parked in a deck chair. And he just literally sat down and took a deck chair on the field. You think, this is not cricket as I know it at all. But yeah, it's I suppose my involvement with the club really comes from Jacob originally, because we had it was one summer holiday and we couldn't, and it was like all sort of 10-year-olds just he runs out of patience. He's becoming disruptive and difficult. We happened to see this advert in the local paper, I think it was, and it said cricket, cricket academy, cricket club, come along to the thing and play cricket for 4 or 5 days a week. And we thought, perfect, let's get him out of the house, get him, to have a go. Didn't think anything of it. And then I had Chris Fox come up to me at the end of the session and said, we like him, would you like to do a bit more? And he stayed on and played more. And then of course I got drawn in, one way or another, and that was some of the best years of my life, if I'm honest.
Yeah.
I really enjoyed them.
Yeah.
And get the wording right here, but playing alongside Jacob.
Well done there, John.
It's been rehearsed, I can tell you. But playing alongside, has given me some great pleasure. I mean, absolutely tremendous, enjoyment. And I think, you can't put a price on that. I think.
No, I agree. I can sort of see that the enjoyment that some people have had with sort of playing alongside their children in the same team. Unfortunately, that's not something that I've had the luxury of. My son, he's got very different interests, and I guess because he didn't live with me all the time, I couldn't potentially show him a pathway, and we didn't live in the area, so it's a sort of slightly different set of circumstances. But yeah, absolutely, I've seen many sort of father-son relationships in a game, and in the joy that sort of both people get out of doing that and sort of playing in those type of games.
I think so, and I think, but I mean, the other thing, I just wanted to go back to what we touched on earlier about, about winning versus enjoyment. And I mean, I made a comment, I think, to Andy Brewster, of course, that one of the things the kids do like to do is win.
Sure.
So you get the impression, in a way, they're probably more competitive than their parents are in the same side. And obviously, the more up, further up we move, as well. The force, I think you can justifiably say, this is about enjoyment, everyone joining in, and you get to the first, and it's not at all. It's about winning, and it's about winning well.
Oh yeah, I agree with that, but it's still the fundamentals.
I'm not criticising this as an idea. I'm just seeing how subtly it seems to change, transmogrify, if you see what I mean, between one and the other. It's not a clear cut-off, if you see what I mean. Thirds move a little bit more towards winning. I think, and presumably seconds, you follow the same.
Absolutely. Look, I've got a bunch of very competitive guys, and as an example, John, which something I did want to touch on is that I've never, bearing in mind I've played the game for a long time, I've never seen the level of commitment around training and practice over the winter months that I've seen this year. It's been extraordinary. I put a lot of credit down to that, particularly on the weekend nets to Vish, because he sort of pulls people together, and we've got a WhatsApp group.
Well, Vish I think is actually camping at the ground. I
don't think he likes his wife anymore. But anyway, there's a group of probably between 6 and 10 guys that have been training regularly at the weekend, and we even started indoor nets at Tunbridge at sort of end of October sort of time. So it's been sort of, people have been really working on their skills and really showing that they want to perform and do well this season. It's been really quite inspirational, John. I've got to say, I've not seen anything like it before.
I can easily believe it, but what would you put that down to? I mean, the reason I say that, and I kind of ask that question, is because I think at least some of it must be COVID. Last season, I mean, I watched a few games or whatever.
Right.
It didn't have that buzz, which it usually does.
Yeah.
I mean, what it's like. Been there, since the dawn of time, practically.
Sure, absolutely.
But there's always been a buzz about the place, and there wasn't last season. And I pin this down to two things: one, COVID, making the whole thing just a rubbish season anyway.
Yeah. And
two, the abolition of the cricket tee, which I'm going to make a point about, and continue to do so.
Absolutely, I totally agree with that, John. I had a situation. It was during the first COVID, so I hadn't had a particularly good day in the field, and I bought my sandwich from the shop, and it was in the wrapper, and I went to open it, and the thing fell all over the floor. It was a complete disaster. And yeah, you know,
it's one of those things you say, oh, sorry.
yeah, this isn't going so well. So you know, I absolutely, the cricket tee for me is fundamental.
I think so.
You know,
well, let's get the tricky question out of the way.
Okay.
Which is it?
Fruitcake.
Ooh, controversy.
Yeah, absolutely.
Fruitcake coming from behind, I think. Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah.
Brooks used fruitcake. Dave was Victoria Sponge.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
Taking the lead. Fruitcake is back in the lead.
So we just have Dan to see next. I know you're going to be waiting for that. So hold your breath.
Yes.
But okay, so let's say you've got your team together. They're just about to go out into the field. Say, let's say you feel. What do you tell them? Do you get them in a huddle? Do you?
No, I'm not.
What are you going to say?
Yeah, I'm not a man for a huddle. I tend to talk to people privately.
So you don't go in and give a motivational.
Well, from time to time, but I think that people motivate themselves, and the way that I've got things set up this season, John, is that we've got the nets booked from 11 o'clock for home games, so people can come here,
hone their skills before they go out,
practice, in whichever way they want to, and then we'll start the game at 1 o'clock, and we've got a list of jobs to do, and everyone sort of chips in on that, so that's fine. And then on an away day, I've got it booked from 10 till 11. So again, there's an opportunity for people to practice if they want to, or if not, we'll sort of head off to the game. But in terms of it'll be small sort of observations, and if we've had a bad day at the office the previous week, I'll sort of say we need to move on from that and everything else. So I will say a few words, but I'm not a one for a great big speech before a game. I think. And sometimes during the game, something might happen, or we might have had a poor period of play, and then that might be more appropriate. There might be a drinks break or whatever.
So you have a word with your bowlers?
Or not just bowlers, but just everyone to sort of, because on a hot day sometimes people lose focus, or if we're not sort of thinking through what we're trying to do.
I kind of developed two things.
Right.
When I was doing it. First day, three things actually. First day I bought a copy of Mike Brearley's book, The Art of Captaincy, which actually, it's not because I thought I could ever learn anything from it, but it's actually a really good read.
Yeah, it's a very
really good book.
Yeah,
it's very sharp. There's that. Then I adopted at one stage. We used to do this this kind of Michael Vaughan huddle, as it.
Okay, yeah.
And you get them all sort of their arms around each other, and they'd be sort of looking at me, waiting for the words of wisdom. I said, I have no idea about this at all, what we're meant to be doing. I said, but if we do this for the next 15 seconds and then break the huddle with a clap, I said, it scares the living daylights out of the opposition because they think we've got some plan.
Yeah, absolutely.
So we used to do that, and then, I'd clap and we'd all go. And the third thing which I used to do is that I had a series of kind of signals which I would use for the bowlers.
Okay.
Which I didn't use it all the time, but a couple of games I did, and I would, I'd just gestures to the bowlers saying, lift a bit and things like this, and then I started coming up with all sorts of signals, and I said to the bowlers, don't pay any attention to this. This is purely to try and wind up the batsman.
Yeah.
So I'd be going, or occasionally things like this, and the batsman just looked bewildered at this. And sometimes I suppose you could almost count it as sledging, in which case it was a bit naughty of me, but it just bewildered me. They thought, what is he on about?
Yeah.
What's he taking?
I think, interesting on the preparation side, we played against Tunbridge Wells last year, and I've seen this with other sides as well, good sides. They're getting up the ground early, they're fielding practice. I'm sure they were up, we were due to start at 1, and I'd been up in the morning, and I popped back up about 10 to 12, and they were already there. They were fielding drills going on. It was sort of like, we're taking this seriously. So one of the things we have started to do is do some fielding drills, and that's been a positive thing as well, just to sort of get us in the right mindset.
But that's a philosophy change, definitely. You go back 10 years, and the seconds, who are one of our premier sides. Let's not forget this. The seconds would not be doing that at all. They just sort of ambled onto the pitch, hands in pockets. So I think that's a huge change, really.
Sure.
But do you see that in terms of results? Do you see, is it reflected, I suppose, in
I think certainly. I think people are a bit more switched on, and catching opportunities in games
as you well know, Johnny, it can be quite important at times. So, you know, I'm not always just catching wins, but, you know, equally, if you're sort of shelling half a dozen every week, it's not so good. So, you know, I think all these things do help. It's just the small sort of margins sometimes.
It doesn't take much though, as you say. You get a couple of wickets or a couple of drops, just change the whole face of the game.
Absolutely.
I mean, you know, without any difficulty at all. I mean, you talked about various aspects, you know, motivation, talking to the bowlers, batsmen, whatever, any things, presumably things in aspects of technique that you might see. So presumably already you must have. I mean, I know it changes from week to week, but you must have some idea of what your 11, which players you're going to have, basically.
Well, I think, John,
as kind of your core.
Yeah, exactly. It would be my core. I think probably 6 or 7, and I think that most teams we're trying to get to that point. And also one of the things that, you know, I'm very big on, John, that possibly we haven't done in the past, and we started to do last season, certainly in the twos, is planning out when people are available. So sort of rather than sort of looking at it on a week by week basis, we're sort of either looking at it on a monthly basis or ideally on a 2-monthly basis. And you know, because not everyone can play every week, but you want a good level of availability, and you want some visibility.
You want confidence in the availability. I mean, as I said, you know, I used to be reminded of the fact we'd be sent into battle without any batsmen and a few spinners, basically.
Yeah. So we're trying to have a bit more joined up thinking around that. So even at, you know, 3rd and 4th team level, we've talked, you know, Brooksy and Dave around a group of young players and having 3 or 4 in each team and managing them and making sure that we've got the right balance in the team, because that was one of the things, you know, we used to have balance sides, which I was a big believer in having a balanced team, because you don't have to have the best players, and even in the first team you don't have to have the best players, because as we've sort of said before, you know, it's probably a few key players that make the difference at times, and you might have 2 or 3 guys who were good in the field and whatever else, and you know, that's what they bring to the party, but they're good in the dressing room and everything else. So it's sort of how you look at these things sometimes, John. I'm a big believer. So I have got my core, you know, the core is very much in my mind, but equally I'm quite open-minded about possibly 2 or 3 players every week, and, you know, see where we are.
I think it's, I mean, one of the great things about the fours, I mean, and which I suppose I kind of like to half claim was a victory on my part, was that, I mean, I basically said to the selection committee, look, you know, we just got to have a fighting chance going into these games. So, and we actually kind of pushed to have one of the really decent batsmen or bowlers from one of the higher teams, basically, and said, look, you know, if you gave to us in the fours one of the bowlers who may not even have got much more than a couple of overs in, say, the twos, but they're going to make a big difference in the fours. It gives us a chance to actually win a game. And all the same with the batsman, something like this.
Yeah.
If you give us one really good bat, you know, so the rest of us can scrape around and we'll build an innings and we can defend.
Yeah.
And so I have to say, you know, my philosophy in the fours was much simpler, because it was really hinged around us just getting enough to make a game of it, and when it did, it generally worked well. I mean, my first game of captaincy, obviously apart, which was a disaster, but yeah, it's. So you're obviously looking forward to it. You must be looking forward to the next season. I'm sure as hell.
I think you know, there's lots to look forward to. You know, it's the 75th anniversary of the club, which,
it's a big deal.
Yeah, you know, and there's some great events around that, and I think that, you know, I've seen lots of players that are motivated. I've seen lots of young players at the Thursday night sessions, and, you know, some of the senior players, me included, have all tried to sort of go to their net and be part of them and make them feel part of it, and, you know, show some interest and try and bring them on, and, you know, say they'll be playing in the fours or threes, but just helping them out, giving them some words of advice. And there's actually a very good vibe around the club, John. I'd say there's a lot of good energy at the moment.
And I like the sound, because I mean, last year was just terrible. So
Yeah,
it was just an awful time, and most of that was, in fact, is way beyond our control.
Absolutely, of course.
And the decline of the cricket team, which is
absolutely
something I will keep coming back to.
Well, actually, you know, on the point, and the game I mentioned at Firle last year, and they actually did a cricket tee for us, and I think it was probably only it was the first time I think you were allowed to, and they got the tables out and we were outside having a cricket tea, and it was fantastic. It was great, John. You know, you sort of forget
it makes your heart rise, it really does. John, An absolute pleasure talking to you.
Thanks, John. Thanks for your time.
Absolutely.
Yeah, pleasure. Thank you.